"You don't have leadership potential," the HR director announced across the conference table, sliding a severance agreement toward me while my manager nodded solemnly beside her as if they were delivering a terminal diagnosis rather than destroying 7 years of my life. "We're restructuring toward a more dynamic team culture, and frankly, your performance reviews indicate a lack of ambition that doesn't align with where Nexus Technologies is heading." I cleaned my desk quietly that afternoon, carrying a cardboard box past colleagues who wouldn't meet my eyes, walking out of the building where I'd created the technology that generated 73% of their revenue. 6 weeks later, their stock dropped 34%, their biggest client threatened to pull out, and my lawyer's letter arrived on the CEO's desk. "My client holds sole patent rights to the NextCore processing system. Licensing fees will be $12.3 million annually, retroactive to product launch." Let me tell you how I became the quiet engineer who brought a $2 billion company to its knees. I never wanted to be a leader. That was my fundamental sin at Nexus Technologies, a company that valued self-promotion over substance, ambition over achievement. In their world, success meant networking events and executive visibility, PowerPoint presentations, and strategic positioning. Actually building things was secondary to being seen building things. I was a builder, not a performer. My name is Vanessa Thornton, and I joined Nexus as a junior software engineer straight out of MIT, drawn by their mission statement about revolutionary technology solutions and their promises of innovation-focused culture. What I found instead was a company that talked constantly about innovation while actively suppressing the people who could deliver it. The organizational structure was designed to extract credit upward. Engineers built products, team leads took credit, directors presented the work as their own, executives announced breakthroughs to shareholders. By the time any achievement reached the C-suite, it had been stripped of its original fingerprints entirely. I learned this system quickly and decided to work within it, focusing on what I loved: solving problems, writing elegant code, pushing technical boundaries, while accepting that recognition would never follow. For 6 years, that compromise worked well enough. I was underpaid but stable, overlooked but productive. I told myself it was worth it to do work that mattered. Then I invented NextCore, and everything changed. The problem that led to NextCore had been frustrating the industry for years. Data processing bottlenecks were limiting what cloud computing could achieve. Every major tech company was working on solutions: parallel processing improvements, hardware optimizations, algorithmic refinements, but nobody had cracked the fundamental architecture issue. I saw it differently. While everyone else was trying to make existing systems faster, I realized the problem wasn't speed, it was structure. The way data moved through processing layers was inherently inefficient, creating cascading delays that no amount of optimization could fix. You couldn't make a broken pipeline faster, you needed a new pipeline entirely. I spent 18 months developing that new pipeline. Nights, weekends, vacation days, all devoted to an architecture that processed data through entirely new pathways, eliminating bottlenecks by redesigning how information flowed at a fundamental level. I built it on my own time, on my own equipment, using my own resources. This was crucial, and entirely intentional. I'd read enough industry horror stories to understand that anything created on company time or equipment could be claimed as company property. I was meticulous about boundaries. When I had a working prototype, I did something unusual. Before showing anyone at Nexus, I filed for a provisional patent. A lawyer friend helped me navigate the process, and the application was submitted 3 weeks before I presented my work internally. The presentation was the last time my name was attached to NextCore. My team lead, Brandon Mercer, immediately recognized the potential. "This is incredible, Vanessa. This could revolutionize our entire product line." He was practically vibrating with excitement. "We need to take this to leadership immediately. We should document my role clearly," I said. "For the patent attribution, of course, of course. Don't worry about the paperwork. I'll make sure everything's handled properly." He did not handle it properly. What Brandon handled was a series of meetings with directors and executives, all without me present. All framing NextCore as a team breakthrough that emerged from Nexus's collaborative innovation culture. My prototype became a department achievement. My architecture became a company asset. By the time NextCore was announced to shareholders, it was described as the product of Nexus's world-class engineering team with special recognition for visionary leadership from people who hadn't written a line of code in years. My name appeared nowhere. I tried to correct the record. I requested meetings with leadership, sent documented emails outlining my sole authorship, provided timestamps and development logs proving when and where the work had been done. Each attempt was met with the same response: sympathetic nods, promises to look into it, and absolutely no change. "These things get complicated in collaborative environments," the VP of engineering told me. "Individual contributions are hard to separate from team efforts. I can show you exactly what I built, when I built it, and prove that nobody else contributed. Vanessa, I understand you feel strongly about this. But dwelling on attribution isn't healthy. What matters is that the company succeeds. We all benefit from that success. I filed a patent application before presenting the work internally. His expression shifted. I'm sorry? A provisional patent. Filed before anyone at Nexus knew about NextCore. Documenting my sole invention. The meeting ended abruptly. The VP had other commitments suddenly. He'd get back to me. He never did. What happened next was a masterclass in corporate retaliation disguised as performance management. Within 2 months of that patent conversation, my performance reviews, previously solid if unexceptional, suddenly revealed alarming deficiencies. I lacked leadership potential. I wasn't a team player. I showed insufficient ambition and failed to align with company culture. Brandon, who had built his career trajectory on my invention, led the charge. He documented my inability to collaborate effectively and my resistance to feedback. He noted my tendency to work in isolation and my difficulty communicating with stakeholders. Every trait that had enabled me to create NextCore was reframed as a liability. The HR meeting came 6 months after my patent conversation with the VP. We're restructuring toward a more dynamic team culture, the HR director explained, and your performance reviews indicate a lack of ambition that doesn't align with where Nexus Technologies is heading. I signed the severance agreement. It included a clause releasing Nexus from any intellectual property claims, which I crossed out before signing. The HR director noticed but said nothing, probably assuming it was a meaningless gesture from a terminated employee. It wasn't. The months after my termination were strategic. I'd anticipated this outcome since the VP's expression changed during our meeting. The moment they realized I held independent patent rights, I became a threat that needed to be eliminated. Firing me was their attempt at containment. They assumed that without employment, without resources, without corporate backing, I'd eventually accept whatever settlement they offered. They assumed I'd be desperate, malleable, grateful for any acknowledgement at all. They didn't know I'd spent 6 years saving money while being underpaid. They didn't know my MIT connections included several patent lawyers who'd been watching NextCore's development with professional interest. They didn't know I'd documented every email, every meeting, every instance of credit being stripped from my work. My provisional patent converted to a full patent 4 months after my termination. The USPTO approved it with my name as sole inventor, protecting the core architecture that made NextCore function. Nexus Technologies had built their flagship product on technology they didn't own. The lawyer's letter was carefully crafted. We sent it to Nexus's CEO, board of directors, and legal department simultaneously. The language was precise, professional, and devastating. My client, Dr. Vanessa Thornton, holds United States patent #11-847-293 covering the fundamental architecture of the NextCore processing system. Analysis by our technical experts confirms that NextCore, as currently deployed in Nexus Technologies products, utilizes this patented technology without license or authorization. We are prepared to pursue all legal remedies, including injunctive relief that would require immediate cessation of NextCore-dependent products. However, my client prefers to resolve this matter through licensing arrangements. Proposed terms: annual licensing fee of $12.3 million, retroactive to product launch, with ongoing royalties of 8% on NextCore-related revenue. You have 30 days to respond before we initiate litigation. The stock dropped 34% within a week of the letter becoming public. Nexus's response was predictable: denial, threats, and attempted intimidation. Their lawyers claimed my patent was invalid, arguing that the work had been done on company time using company resources. They produced documents, some legitimate, some clearly fabricated, attempting to show that NextCore was a team development. We had better documentation. Every timestamp on my personal development files. Every receipt for equipment I'd purchased myself. Every weekend and vacation day I'd logged as personal time. Every email showing my attempts to claim credit, and every response denying those attempts. Most damaging was the timeline. My provisional patent application had been filed 3 weeks before my internal presentation. The architecture described in that application matched NextCore exactly. There was no way it could have been a company development. I documented it as my own invention before anyone at Nexus knew it existed. The legal battle lasted 18 months. Nexus tried every tactic: settlement offers that insulted me, motions to dismiss that were rejected, attempts to depose colleagues who would testify against me. They hired private investigators to find anything damaging about my personal life. They planted stories in tech media about disgruntled employees making spurious claims. None of it worked. The discovery phase was particularly illuminating. Under oath, Brandon Mercer admitted he had never contributed technical work to NextCore, only project management and stakeholder communication. The VP of Engineering acknowledged that my patent conversation had prompted him to consult with legal about potential exposures. Internal emails revealed discussions about neutralizing the Thornton situation months before my termination. The most damning document was an email from the CEO to the board, written 1 week after my firing. The Thornton patent issue has been contained. With her separated from the company and under severance agreement, our legal position is strengthened. We should proceed with NextCore expansion as planned. They'd fired me specifically because of my patent. They'd done it believing it would weaken my legal position. They'd documented their reasoning in writing. My lawyers nearly wept with joy. The settlement was negotiated in a federal courthouse conference room. Nexus's legal team arrived looking exhausted. They'd spent millions fighting a case they were clearly going to lose, and their client's stock price had suffered accordingly. The trial was scheduled to begin in 2 weeks, and every pretrial ruling had gone my way. Their opening offer, $5 million, one-time payment, all claims released. My counter, $47 million, plus ongoing royalties, plus public acknowledgement of my sole invention. We settled at $38 million cash, 5% royalties on NextCore revenue for the patent's lifetime, and a press release acknowledging me as NextCore's inventor. The press release was the part Nexus fought hardest against. They could absorb the money, painful but survivable. What they couldn't stand was the public admission that their collaborative innovation culture had stolen an employee's work and fired her for objecting. But I insisted. The money was important, but the truth was more important. The aftermath reshaped several careers. Brandon Mercer was quietly demoted and eventually left the company. The VP of Engineering pursued other opportunities within a year. The CEO survived, CEOs usually do, but faced a shareholder lawsuit over his handling of the situation that cost him his bonus for 3 consecutive years. Nexus Technologies recovered eventually. NextCore was too valuable to fail, even with licensing fees eating into profits. They paid my royalties quarterly, each check a reminder of what they'd tried to take. I used the settlement to start my own company. Thornton Systems launched 2 years after the settlement, focused on the same kind of architectural innovation that had created NextCore. My team is small, 12 engineers who are properly credited for their work and properly compensated for their contributions. Our culture is radical transparency. Every patent lists actual inventors, every project attributes individual contributions, every achievement belongs to the people who achieved it. We're not as large as Nexus. We probably never will be. But we're profitable, growing, and built on something Nexus never understood. You can't sustain innovation by exploiting innovators. The lack of ambition charge still makes me laugh. What they meant was that I lacked a specific kind of ambition, the kind that involves climbing over colleagues, claiming credit for others' work, performing confidence instead of competence. I lacked the ambition to be a Brandon Mercer, building a career on stolen achievements. But I had a different kind of ambition, the ambition to create something genuinely new, to solve problems that mattered, to build technology that worked. That ambition drove me through 18 months of nights and weekends, through years of being overlooked, through a legal battle against a billion-dollar corporation. That kind of ambition doesn't show up in performance reviews. It doesn't impress HR directors or executive committees. It's quiet, persistent, and invisible until suddenly it isn't. I gave a talk at MIT last spring. Engineering students, many of them about to enter the workforce, many of them headed to companies exactly like Nexus. I could see the idealism in their eyes, the belief that talent would be recognized and good work would be rewarded. I told them the truth. Document everything. Keep records of what you create, when you create it, and the resources you use. Understand your employment contracts, what you own, what your employer owns, where the lines are. File patents before sharing innovations internally. Trust no one's promise to handle the paperwork properly. A student raised her hand. That sounds so cynical. Isn't there any company that treats engineers fairly? There are some. I'm trying to build one. But you can't assume fairness, you have to protect yourself as if it doesn't exist, and then be pleasantly surprised when it does. Did you always know you'd fight back? When they fired you, did you know you'd win? I thought about the question. About the box I'd carried out of Nexus, the colleagues who wouldn't meet my eyes, the weeks of doubt before my lawyers confirmed we had a case. I didn't know I'd win. I knew I was right. Sometimes that's enough to keep fighting, even when winning seems impossible. Nexus Technologies still operates. They've developed other products, hired other engineers, moved past the scandal that briefly threatened their existence. Brandon Mercer started a consulting firm that I've heard isn't doing well. The VP of Engineering retired comfortably, his reputation only slightly tarnished. The system that created my situation continues largely unchanged. Companies still extract credit upward, still reward performance over substance, still treat engineers as interchangeable resources rather than creative professionals. The next Vanessa Thornton is probably sitting in some corporate office right now, building something revolutionary while being evaluated for leadership potential and cultural fit. I can't change the system. But I can show that the system isn't invincible. That the quiet engineer in the corner might be holding patents they don't know about. That lack of ambition might actually mean ambition that threatens you. My royalty check arrived last week. $2.7 million for the quarter. Nextcore continues to generate revenue, and I continue to receive my percentage. Each payment is a reminder that they needed my work to succeed, and that I ensured I'd benefit from that success. Not through their generosity. Through my preparation. Some people might call that vindictive. I call it justice. In a system designed to exploit creators, the only protection is the protection you build yourself. I was fired for lacking ambition. Now I own part of everything they sell. Some ambitions just take longer to reveal themselves. The plaque in my office says it simply. Nextcore Processing System, invented by Dr. Vanessa Thornton. Underneath it is a framed copy of my termination letter, the one that cited my lack of leadership potential. I look at them both every morning before starting work. The termination letter reminds me what happens when you trust corporations to value your contributions. The patent plaque reminds me what happens when you don't. Both lessons were expensive. Both were worth it.